Oh, there we go. So, how was your day? I don't know if we have people yet. Anna, please let us know when people are on. I'm not in the studio like usual. I'm using my phone. How was your
Uh,
day? It's the last 2 weeks till elections.
yeah. I've been driving a lot today. So today I drove 1.5 hour to Stinkwater to Hammanskraal to distribute menstrual cup and to also share the gender equity policy to the women there. So it was a really good conversation. Also did a door to door. It was really hot there.
Yeah,
And
it was hot.
yeah, but on top of that, I'm on my period and
Same.
and I had food poisoning. So you know how when you're on your period, it also sometimes you get diarrhea too, like just having
Yeah.
your period, like you. And so today was just not a great day.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Well,
Conversations are good though.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, good evening. And firstly, whoever is there, we are unable to see you guys from the side. Um, Firstly, apologies for starting late. It's actually the first time that has ever happened on this platform. We don't usually start late, but we did send an apology in terms of the late start. Um, but we do want to have a very wholesome chat. Just to introduce myself, my name is Khao Palelwe. I'm the Digital Campaigns Manager at Rise Mzansi. And today I'm joined by Faiza Locke, one of the National Leadership Collective members. And I've done this before with Faiza. We did a fireside chat the last time. And today we're talking about the menstrual equity plan that was recently launched on Saturday, actually. And I thought it would be great to just have an evening. We would have loved to have the co authors. I'm sure we'll get into that with us. But today we do have Faiza. And I said to her before we started that this is the day we can talk about being on our period. Actually, it should be every day because I have a breakout all over my face. This is what happens to me every time I'm on my period. I get a breakout,
Mm.
I get zits everywhere, I become very oily, I feel very sluggish and tired. And you also said you're on your period, and I was like, oh my gosh, and we're talking about this. I want to start with just, I mean, from the first time I got to Rise, you've always been passionate about, ending period poverty. That's been one thing that you have been championing a lot. I still remember I don't know if there were events before that, but there was an event you covered in Alex where you went to give away menstrual cups. Let's talk about first your journey to this being a passion before we even get to the paper. When did it click to you that this is something that you want to champion and I guess lead in a way?
Yeah, thank you, Hao. My journey started in 2019 when I volunteered at an organization called Mina Foundation. And I had firsthand experience seeing girls in this country use plastic bags as pads. They've used cow dung because it's more absorbent to absorb the period. People have used millies. People have used different. Girls have used different products. Well, it's not really a product, but items to ensure that they are able to get through their period. And from there on, I immediately joined the organization full time. I wanted to champion this issue. And from there on, I've been a menstrual activist because this is something that I care about a lot as someone who have had a very difficult journey getting to know more about my body and as well as just navigating through womanhood. Because growing up, I grew up in Hong Kong, so for those who don't know, I grew up in Hong Kong, and in Asia, it's like here too. It's very taboo to even speak about your body. I've only had one sexual reproductive like sex education class when I was 12, once, and it was very scientific. Um, and we don't really talk about masturbation. We don't talk about the different products and options that you can have as a woman uh, to navigate through your period. And by the time when I was a late bloomer, so by the time when I had my period at 15, I forgot everything that they taught me because at that time I was like, you know, I couldn't relate yet. And so throughout my journey as a woman, it's been difficult to navigate through a world where it is seen as embarrassing and shameful to speak about your vagina. And I think joining Mina Foundation and joining organization and getting to know more organization that advocates and eradicate period poverty, I feel I feel a lot more in tune to myself. I feel like I this is part of my calling. And I think that's why I have committed to champion the menstrual equity policy at Rise Mzansi, because it's made me the person I am today. Because my activism journey really started off as a menstrual activist that led to me being in politics.
Thank you so much for that, because I think often we read papers, but we don't know the stories behind how these bodies of work I call came about. And I think this is not, obviously, it's a multiple story, you are part of it, but it was important to know your journey with it. And I think before we just continue with the conversation, I wanted you to first start with just kind of outlining what period poverty means, because we use the term, but not everybody understands what we actually mean by the term.
Yeah. Pure poverty is the lack of access to sanitary product, but it goes beyond that. It's the lack of access to water, lack of access to hygiene and sanitation. So, do you have clean toilets? Do you have enough knowledge to practice menstrual hygiene? So it goes beyond just not having the sanitary products that you need to use on a monthly basis. It is about, do I have a comprehensive knowledge on ensuring that I have a happy period?
Absolutely. I actually love the ending of that, a happy period. You spoke about how when you learned about, periods and everything, and I look back and I'm like, I guess this is a big part of period poverty is I didn't know anything. I just remember coming from school and I got up from the bus and I was wet and I was like, what's going
Mm,
on? And I ran home. I literally ran home. And luckily, I was raised by my grandmother. And when I got home, and I went to like a private school, but there was no such information. I remember I got home and I went to the toilet, and my cousin, who was a nurse, who was much younger, was there. And I screamed her name while in the toilet and I showed her. And all she did was she just gave me a pad, showed me how to put it. But nobody really ever said much. And I think from there on, even till now, I learned, I think in varsity, how you're supposed to put the wings on a regular pad. It's like you
mm,
learn things over time. Even the fact that you're not supposed to go through too much extreme and excruciating pain. You must go check what's going on. There are period pains, but they shouldn't be too extreme. Then something is wrong. So I think that's also a very big part of it. I can't remember the number now, but I remember the stats of how many girls in this country still actually have to miss school because of periods. And I think that's also one of the things that motivated the period poverty. I just want the equity plan rather. I want you to speak to that and just give us a picture of how dire the situation is.
yeah. So 30% of young women in South Africa are experiencing pure poverty. 30%. And it's scary. It perpetuates the patriarchy, and that's what really gets me really excited about this menstrual equity policy. Is this is Rise and Mzansi commitment to gender equality, and we start dismantling the patriarchy, uh, because the reality is, because we're currently facing a water crisis, but we talk about all these crises that we're facing, one of the biggest being the water crisis. But how can we talk about the water crisis when how can we talk about our menstrual rights if our taps are dry? How can we talk about all of these policy when we don't even have have water to maintain the cleanliness of our menstruation. And so currently, it's being a South African is living in one of the most unequal country. You, as a woman, you face with a lot of barriers to be able to live a life that you can thrive in, for you to be able to contribute meaningfully in our nation's progress. And it's these things that consistently set women back, set girls back. Imagine girls have to miss days of education because they don't have sanitary products and they just stay home. This is the reason why girls are it prevents girls from participating in getting an education. And this is not the kind of world that we envision in Rise Mzansi, that girls and women have to compromise in order to learn and thrive.
Yeah, especially I think there's something in the paper that talks about how, this is something we can't control. This is something we're born with. It's not something we should be struggling over. It's not something that we should be suffering because of. And like you said, it perpetuates the patriarchy, because one of the things I saw when we released the paper, a lot of people in the comment section were like, oh, the country's going through enough. You can't be telling us about menstruation. And how do you feel about the fact that people tend to think there are bigger problems, and the problems of women, and especially young girls, are like a side note, like let's put it in the back? And I don't think I've seen any political party, not to be biased, say much really, apart from giving away pads, but really come up with a policy to say we can bridge the gap.
Yeah, this is where you can really see that the patriarchy is working. The reason why pure poverty is not the center, the reason why we're not centering policies around women's health and dignity, is because there's not enough gender diverse people in policy making processes. Historically, our politics are dominated by men and still are. And this is why we need new leaders at Rise and new leaders in South Africa, because we really need new answers. But historically, there's just not enough women and gender diverse people who champion the issues that centers around majority of the population in this country. So that's why you will see condoms are free, because you want to advocate for public health safety, but sex is a choice. Having my period is not. That happens every single month, and it's a huge economic barrier for women and menstruators, because women have to spend around 25 rand, and if you're only receiving 350 rand as a social grant, that's a huge chunk that's out of your savings, just to be a woman. So we need to level the playing field, and we need to shift the culture to where we value um, women's and menstruators' role in society. We need to support all menstruators. We need to value all menstruators, so then menstruators can participate fully in our society. And uh, and the policy actually speaks about how we are dismantling the patriarchy. And I'll just share three things on how we are doing that. Number one is that we're providing free and affordable menstrual products. So whether it's pads, whether it's tampons, whether it's menstrual cups, whether it's reusable pads, we're giving women options, the freedom to choose, and help them to reduce the financial burden on them, because economic empowerment helps us to mitigate one of the many ways that patriarchy exerts control, by keeping women economically dependent. And so in the policy, it says that at a school level, at a clinic level, at a workplace level, at a community level, there will be places. These are the places that you have free access of sanitary products. So even if you're surprised by your period, there will always be one nearby. Another thing that we are championing on how we're dismantling the patriarchy is challenging taboos and stigma. when I are too embarrassed, and when women are too embarrassed to share what's going on with our bodies, when we're too embarrassed to use words like vagina, um, it perpetuates the silence and the stigma around this issue. So, one of the things that we're doing and championing in this policy is we're going to educate boys, both boys and girls, about menstruation, um, and break down the cultural taboos that contribute to shaming and silencing of the menstruators, because that's how we really start creating a culture of understanding and respect. That this is something that happens in every woman's life, and you as a man who would one day might have a daughter, you too have the responsibility to be able to guide your daughter through the realities of womanhood.
No,
And the last,
absolutely.
just one more thing, because this is something that Silna speaks a lot about, which is um, the access to reproductive healthcare services. So at Rise Mzansi in our manifesto, we said that we're in every single home in 15 minutes radius there should be a healthcare clinic, and for a major hospital in an hour. What we're going to also ensure that there is healthcare services for menstrual disorders like PCOS, like thyroid diseases, menopause. Making sure that women have the knowledge, have the treatments like hormone treatment to ensure that they are taking care of themselves. There are preventative measures and treatments to be able to better ensure that they live healthy lives. Because when we do not take hormone treatments, if you're going through menopause and you don't take hormone treatments, it actually lead to ovarian cancer. And just making sure that men and women understand what does having a uterus mean, and what are the challenges as someone who has a uterus, what are the diseases that would disproportionately are affected, like endometriosis. So making sure that people have access to information and access to treatment, to ensure that we have a healthy reproductive healthcare.
Absolutely. I love that. I love the fact that, it drives information, because that's critical. I mean, one of the things that exacerbates, these types of things is the fact that people don't know what kind of service they should be having. Um, I did want to ask us to go back. So, just to the planning. I know one of the co-authors is Candice Shira. Can you just tell us about the team that put together this piece and how you guys got together, and why, those people were chosen to co-author this plan with you?
Yes, one of the most exciting thing about writing this plan was to work with menstrual activists who have been fighting against period poverty and a more period positive world. And so throughout my journey as a menstrual activist, I got the privilege to meet Shari and Candice. So Candice, she is online. She calls herself the Minister of Menstruation because she champions this issue. This is her whole life's mission, is to eradicate period poverty, is to advocate for a more period positive world. And there isn't anyone else that I could think of that would know as much and are as involved especially when it comes to legislating and policy making in this issue. She currently writing her PhD in this topic. And so she was able to bring her experiences as someone who sits in the committee in the Department of Women, Youth and Disability, in championing this issue. So there is a committee that's specifically about how we're going to ensure that there is a more menstruation equitable access to all women and girls in this country. And so she sits in the board and basically advises the department. And then on she's the co-founder of the Menstrual Project, and they do they do reproductive education, and they distribute sanitary products to women and girls in need. And both of them are someone that I have been working with as a menstrual activist, and I've been really in awe of their work. And part of one of the best thing about working on this policy was able to work with really amazing people, individuals like them.
It's amazing, and the reason I particularly asked it and want you to introduce who they are, I mean, in their absence, and hopefully one day we can have them on, is it just speaks into the politics of Rise of involving the people who are already doing the work in the communities, who have already done the work, partnering with them. They don't have to be members of Rise or supporters, or we don't have members, supporters of Rise per se, but engaging the people, intentionally in order to reach where we got. Um, and then I wanted to go into just why period equity instead of period equality.
Um, so equity, it's about saying that we're not all the same. And therefore, we need to level the playing field. And that's what we're trying to do here because you need to get through equity. We need to create a world where we understand the barriers and challenges of what a gender diverse person or a menstruator experience, level that playing field, then the outcome one day would be gender equality. But for now, the playing field is not the same. So this is why we even boldly legislated. Well, in the document, we will legislate a 2-day menstrual leave. And this is outside of annual leave and sick leave. And that's because we're trying to legislate something that gets um, men and women to understand that there are fundamental needs. And this is a biological process that women experience every single month. And menstruation pain is part of the experience of being a woman. And menstruation pain can be extremely painful. It affects the way how you focus, it affects your productivity, it affects your daily life. I've had friends and Fanny, I'm sure you can also attest to that, where women have to take leave or they have to miss days of school because they're on their period, because of how unbearable um, the menstruation pain is. And so, really, the reason why it's gender equity is because of policy. We need to legislate policy like this that recognize that we need to level the playing field so that women in all menstruates can participate fully in all aspects of society without penalty. And this also change workplace culture where the needs of all employees are respected, are supported, and are valued.
Absolutely, I love that, and I wanted you to unpack the equity part because I always make an example of my children, because people tend to run to equality before they think of equity. And I tend to say, I have a 9-year-old and a 4-year-old. They're not at the same level in their development, but I'll always teach my 9-year-old that your brother needs a step ladder. Your brother needs this, or not a step ladder, but a step to be able to reach. Or I need to pick him up in order for him to reach where you can reach. And that's what really equity is. It's recognizing that we're different. But I also found the paper to be very intersectional. And I did put in my notes that you were very deliberate, or the paper is very deliberate, in saying women and girls and people who menstruate. And I want to talk about that because I remember there was a picture of gender diverse people, showing that went viral. I don't know if you saw it, and they were on their period. And the picture shows people with a beard, people who are masculine presenting, with a pad on. And for me, when I read the paper and I saw how deliberate it is in terms of being inclusive, I thought it was really intersectional. Um, how do you see South Africans, buying into that, especially considering how there hasn't been any political will to be as inclusive, in the current establishment, and the language we use, can be people can be so, like they can like be so opposed to it. How do
Mm.
we how will we work on ensuring that people buy into this, especially considering how conservative South Africans are?
Yeah, I guess step one is to legislate it. Like, turn into a reality first. I mean, talking about it, and even that video that you mentioned, it's powerful. Storytelling is powerful, but we need to ensure that politicians have the political will to legislate, to start using inclusive language, so you include everyone in the room, to say, "I recognize your pain," and so because you also experience, you're part of this conversation, and we're talking to you too, and so I think, really, long story short, it's really about making sure that we we are living the realities of or being led as a country by people who are inclusive and understand that a menstruator and people who menstruate are not all identify as women, and our identity are diverse. That just because we look alike doesn't mean we are the same,
Yeah.
because gender is fluid, and we need to. It really starts with legislating, by making sure that we build bridges and understanding with each other.
I love that. And I love the fact that you said, one, we need to legislate it. But two, you said something that made me think of what our national chair and Gauteng Premier candidate, Vuyisara Makgopa, always says. She said something recently. She said in one of the debates, she says, young people, there is voter apathy among the youth because young people do not see the people in politics who look like them, speak like them, and are like them. Um, and for me, this speaks into having people like yourself in these areas that are very critical in politics, who speak like the young people who are out there, who feel unrepresented. And a large group of those people are people who are gender diverse, people who are trans, who don't see politicians represent them, and they as human as everybody else and deserve the recognition and the legislation of their own, rights and services the way in which everybody else does. So I'm loving that you said that, and I'm loving that you are part of this and you're here now. And then another thing I felt really uncomfortable with, and I actually judged myself. As I was reading the paper, I was like, menstruators, why? But it does explain why. It speaks to also the people. It's the same thing. But I consistently felt like, why am I being called a menstruator? But I understood that it's for this specific paper. It's not that I'm like generally a menstruator. But it made me feel so uncomfortable. And it was my first time actually seeing the word used in that way for so long. I'm assuming it's also part of the inclusive culture. It's part of like including people as well.
Yeah, I wanted to add to what you were saying. I've always been in the view that people who are closest to pain should be closest to power, because you are able to bring that perspective, and that intersectionality, that of the layers of pain, and struggle. So you're able to better dismantle and design a world that is inclusive to all. That's why I encourage sex workers to get into policy making. I encourage like trans people to get into policy making. We need people who, as you say, as our national chairperson, Vuyisara Makgopa say, we need people who look like us, sound like us, feel like us, to make us feel like, it is possible, because you can't be what you can't see. When you start seeing yourself, in someone who is championing an issue and something that is so close to your heart, you start feeling like, oh, there's hope, and the world becomes a lot more filled with possibility, because that's one of the things that young people feel a bit, feel that they're so heartbroken about democracy, that they don't believe in it anymore. They don't believe in it. And it's sad. And this is why at Rise Mzansi, we main message is we need new leaders. We need new leaders who are gender diverse. We need new leaders who come from different sector of society and bring their unique perspective and experience into the table, into the decision making table, because that's how we truly create a more inclusive and equitable world.
Absolutely. I want to talk about the menstrual leave. One of the things I that it's in the paper, and I mean, I think it's it would be groundbreaking, right? Because essentially you're sick. But I wanted to know why not just include it as part of sick leave because you're sick. Is it because of the kind of T's and C's that come with sick leave? Because I often feel like when we separate, we kind of because you're essentially sick. But I wanted to know, is that what we are calling for, or is it different?
Yeah, the reason why we say that we shouldn't include that into sick leave, because having menstrual pain for 5 days, 7 days, some women even longer, that's is something that happens every single month. Getting sick, you don't get sick every single day. I mean, every single month, and therefore, this is being a natural biological process, shouldn't be included as a sick leave, because you're unwell, but you're not sick. And it's important that we legislate that women menstruators experience menstrual pain. And menstrual pain is a widespread issue. It is extremely painful. And it affects the way how you are contributing, whether it is you as a student learning in a class, whether it's you as someone who is, working, your productivity drops. People go absent. It interrupts your life, and when you, I we wouldn't um, include menstrual leave as sick leave, is because we also don't want to break this cycle of silence and stigma around a very, very natural biological process, which is basically, it's unacceptable that we're not talking about that. So that's really this is about breaking this cycle of silence and stigma around this issue, and legislating this will help us to create a world that we are able to build bridges to understand this very normal human experience that more than half of the population in this world face every single month.
I'm challenging you and the NLC to to put pads in the office somewhere, just in case someone is in need.
Yeah, I will. I actually should be giving you guys all menstrual cups, because that's also I
Exactly.
need to bless you all with menstrual
I
cups, because
actually
that's
want to. I want to try. I've never tried it. I've been seeing you. Could you maybe? I mean, this is the opportunity to do it. Can you give us like some kind of information around the menstrual cups, particularly because you've been going around. I think I've heard before it being presented, but I mean, for the value of the viewers, just how useful it is. How do people actually even use it?
yeah. I love this question, just because it has really changed my life, since uh, I went from pads, then to tampon, and then now menstrual cup, and it's year 8 now. And so the first thing you should know is the menstrual cup is reusable after 10 years. So it's very important, as we think about creating a more sustainable world, that we have circularity in mind. So how can we make sure things are more reusable? So then you're not leaving bunch of pads and tampons that can't be recycled once they're used just in the landfill. It takes around 500 years to get one pad to start, disintegrating into the world. So 500 years, that means your gogos pads are still at the landfill, and this is not contributing to a more sustainable world that we need to start creating. So menstrual cups are biodegradable, and it is made of medically graded silicone. So it's basically the exact same material as a dummy. the tip of a dummy. Um, and I think it's also the same material as the, I think it's called the catheter, where basically after you give birth, you that's that pipe, yeah. So it's the exact same material. It's hypoallergenic, so it's designed to be inside you for more than 12 hours without giving you any allergic reaction. It does not leak unless you have unless your cup is full. It won't leak. So once it's inside you, it just basically sits in your vagina and it collects blood until you decide to remove it. It's super comfortable. You can sleep with it. You can go to the bathroom with it. You can run with it. At times, you don't even feel like something is inside you. That's how comfortable it is because of how soft it is, and it just mold into your vagina. Uh, but yeah, most importantly, it's economically friendly. I mean, it's reusable up to 10 years. That means you don't have to spend a single dime on these on the products every single month. And you can actually put that money into something to spoil yourself.
Wow, and this should be something that, government wise, it's championed. They should be everywhere, from what I understand, because they sound groundbreaking. I'm challenging myself to go try out a menstrual cup. So thank
Yeah.
you for that. One of the other things that I did see in the paper that I thought, gave me a bit of question marks. I think you touched on it a little bit in the morning when we began, but I would like for you to expand it again, and also just to remind the viewers around the accessibility of hormone testing, why that was important to be included in the menstrual equity paper.
Yeah. So women go through, so PCOS, even fibroids, it's part of, as a menstruator, uh, your hormone gets imbalanced every single month. And sometimes a little too more of one hormone, a little too little of one hormone, that could lead to certain effects and diseases, and very painful diseases if left untreated. And so it's very important that we understand our bodies, of how our estrogens influence the way our overall activity of thyroid hormones in our body. It's very important that we understand how our menstrual cycle also affects the thyroid function, which make us more actually susceptible to thyroid issue. So the hormone treatment, the reason why we focus on that is because it disproportionately affects women. So it's very important that we ensure that woman understands that we are more likely to develop thyroid disease
Mm,
because of our hormonal differences. And that actually leads to a lot of painful diseases like PCOS and fibroids. And this is something that I was actually engaging with on the menstrual right panel discussion with the different political parties. The DA representative shared her painful experience of having fibroids and not being able to get testing, and actually didn't have no information until it was too late. Apparently, she found they removed a fibroid as big of of an arm. So it was, and it's these experiences that women have to go through because of pure poverty, that we don't have enough information that lead us to a place where we have to that's a bit too late for us. And this is why we want to prioritize it, because women are disproportionately more affected by um, uh, thyroid disorders.
yeah. It's sad because lack of access to like comprehensive sexual and reproductive services, it's such a problem in this country. It's crazy. And it's like it's a form of GBV because this is what it is. It's lack of comprehensive sexual reproductive health services. They just either not there, they're not prioritized. There's no political will. I want to read some of the comments before I continue, just for us to mince on. Joe says, "Thank you so much for an informative session. I was staying with my daughters in the festive season, and the eldest called me at work to tell me that she was menstruating for the first time. I ran to the garage. On my way back, I brought 2 packets of pads and some pain tablets. From then until to date, I easily buy them whatever they need, or whenever the need arises, and we talk about menstruation and the science behind it. My family and I will vote for Rise and Mzansi." Isn't that just beautiful? It reminds me of a post that went viral on social media where a dad had done a very similar thing that Joe had done, and the amount of women, older women my age and older, saying, "This is so sweet. I wish this was done for me." And I think for me, it goes back to what you said around advocacy and teaching boys and women and everybody in society really to be part and parcel of understanding. It can't be that we still have people shocked by periods.
Exactly. And we can't we need this is how we break barriers, and we start actually breaking the stigma around society on such a important and significant process of being a woman, a menstruator. So that's how we really
Another
start
person,
breaking bias too.
absolutely. Another comment. Swangile therefore says, "This is one of the conversations that is overlooked. Thank you for speaking up on this issue, but I just have a few questions." Absolutely, let's talk about this. The first question, Faiza, is how can we address period poverty in low income communities? I think I'll go one by one, then we'll go to the question two.
Yeah. So when you say low income community, it's with the mindset that there is this community have less access to facilities, less access to information, less access to, all the things that we
Resource,
need.
yeah,
Yes, exactly. Um, it's if under a Rise and Zanzi government, is would be to ensure that we go and prioritize these areas that historically have less access to healthcare services, to reproductive right educations, to cycle awareness educations. So make sure that it becomes part of the community, the school institution, the university institutions, language and curriculum. So then we all start understanding when we start talking about it, it's you're more likely to create the change that we want to see, because most change needs to start from a community level. You need to advocate for this. You need to put pressure on this. You need to show up when there's a public hearing on this. So it's really about ensuring that a government has the political will to ensure that these area prioritizes education, access, and products, sanitary products in these areas.
absolutely. And the paper does speak to that. We'll share the link after this as well for people who haven't seen it. The second question is, what policies or laws can be implemented to support menstrual equity in South Africa?
Is this policy that we have lovely, lovely written by a couple of incredible people, Shari and Candice Chirwa. And basically this policy focuses on three things. Number one, the one of the biggest number one policy, it's about making sure that we have affordable and free menstrual products in communities and a school level, in a clinic level, and a workplace level. So that already we're starting to break, dismantle the patriarchy. We're starting to break the silence in such a normal experience that every woman faces in this country. Number two is about making sure that women have access to information about their health. This is about making sure we understand what is endometriosis. How often should you get a pap smear? Um, how is it normal for you to get depression before your period? So helping you to have the information to better understand how to practice, good health, practice healthier, practice, what's those words? But yeah, so to making sure that you have all the information to be able to have a healthy body. And then lastly is legislating a menstrual leave, which I emphasized previously that it helps us to start having a level the playing field between men and women. That's how we create a more gender equitable world and a more menstruation equitable world.
I need to get used to that. Menstruator. Menstruating. And then I think there's a third one. It says, what are some effective ways to address the economic burden of menstruation on women and girls? I think you've just answered it on the affordable and free. Um,
But also getting a menstrual cup or reusable pad.
yes, yes, absolutely. It reminds me of, I love how these things are interlinked. There's these new cloth nappies you can also get that are reusable. They made differently from the old and olden ones for moms as well. And then number four, Swangile, thank you so much. How can we measure progress and track the impact of menstrual equity initiatives in South Africa? I guess this is
This is Yeah, no, definitely. This is really about transparency and ensuring that we have policymakers that talk to everyday South Africans, that goes into communities and speak to community and share with community to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how far we've come since we launched this, legislated this policy, and this is how you can get involved. So really, it's about making sure that we are able to get our policymakers to engage with our not just their constituents, but engage with South Africans on what's this how what the impact of the menstruation equity policy um, is looking. I know at Rise in Mzansi, we want to legislate one of our electoral amendment uh, uh, policy that we want to put forward is making sure that politicians won't be accountable to political parties only. It needs to be accountable to everyday people. The other thing is to make sure that uh, uh, policymakers, MPs, and the provincial legislature needs to be able to consistently have public engagement platforms, where basically not just having town halls, but making sure that we use social media, which is where most young people are, getting feedback, getting opinion, using different platforms to ensure that we are giving feedback in every single possible way, reaching where your customer is, where your constituents are. And for me, it's really about making sure that we are practicing transparency and accountability, so then people can start trusting the system and start being able to see and feel that what they when they vote for a political party or when they vote for an independent candidate, there's meaning behind that. Something can actually be done. And you know what I learned about going into communities is that sometimes they understand that the system is broken, but it means the world for you to come to them and say, this is what I've done, this is what I've tried, let's try this, let's try this instead. Because while we as future of member of parliament putting pressure in the house, we need people to put pressure on the house externally. And so we need to use different ways in our toolbox to be able to create the outcome we want. But it starts with making sure that our policymakers are practicing transparency and public and encouraging public participation in the work that they do. And at Rise and Sansi, we are definitely committed to do that.
It's one of the things that I keep looking forward to because I think South Africans have for so long been starved of public representatives being accountable to them. We can't even imagine it as a thing, to a point where people, when we go to communities, people are like, you how is this going to work? How are you going to come have you're going to go to parliament and then you're going to forget about us? You're here because you want votes. And Razmzans is saying we need to reform how democracy, we need to make democracy what it is. We need to live it, you know. I think there was either a question or a comment. I'm just going to check. Yomi says, glad to see Faiza's tireless activism continues. Absolutely. And we love to have her here. Faiza, thank you so much. I would have loved to have Candace and now I'm forgetting Shari.
Sorry.
But I'm glad to have had you here and thank you for making time. You know, one of the last questions I have is our document a living document? Is it something that will continue to be populated? Can we still improve on it?
Yeah, all our documents are living documents at Rise Mzansi because as time changes, opinion changes, technology changes. So we need to be able to be adaptable and resilient into this ever-changing world. So yes, if you have any feedback or comments that you would like to share with me, my email is faiza@risemzansi.org. You're welcome to share it with me, and I will be happy to engage with you further.
I love that. Faiza at risemzansi.org. We try to be as accessible as we can. Thank you so much again. If you would like to read the menstrual equity paper, it is not long. It is so quick. It is so easy to read. And before we close, I just want to remind you of the three anchor things that are in the paper that Faiza mentioned, which is affordable and free sanitary towels and products, as long as they're sanitary products, women having access to information about their health, and lastly, legislating menstrual leave. That's what we need you to go out there and tell people about as you share the paper, which is on our website, www.risemzansi.org.za. So .org, there's no .za. .org, risemzansi.org. It's also on our social media platforms. You can just check it, Rise Mzansi Menstrual Equity paper. Read it, share it, discuss it. If you want to add anything, talk to Faiza. And please do stay tuned to our social media channels for more information. We have an amazing rally this coming Sunday, which is the People's Rally, which is the closing rally before the elections on the 29th of May. You do not want to miss this one. We're going to be live virtually and we're going to be at the Reemsig Stadium in Roodepoort. For those who are in Gauteng, there's still a chance to RSVP. So go to our social media channels and RSVP, and don't miss it. If you're in any of our WhatsApp groups, please check it out, and come through and let's, I think for me, the rally, and it's not just for me, what the leaders have said, it's a culmination of the work that Rise Mzansi has done in the past 12 months, for this particular campaign. Ours is to exist for more years to come, but for this specific campaign, this is a culmination of what Faiza and team and the rest of the Rise Mzansi community, the volunteers, the organizers, have done. Um, and it's our gift to South Africa, and you'd not want to miss it. Any parting words, Faiza, before we close?
I just want to say a line that our national leader, Songezo Zibi, says, which is politics is not a spectator sport. You have to, it's a contact sport, so you have to get involved. And so, if instead of shouting outside the car, get in the car and actually drive the car and decide where should we drive the car to. How can we make sure the car drives faster? So please do reach out if you would like to, engage further on this policy, and let's vote for new leaders on the 29th of May.
On all three ballots. And that's how we close it. Thank you so much, Faiza. Thank you so much, everybody, for borrowing us your time, and good night.